After a lifetime of living in the city of Detroit, it's going to be hard to hold me to 2 minutes, but I'm going to try. My name is Edith Hayton Friley. I am a lifelong Detroit native, a product of the Detroit Public Schools, and having worked 32 years of service in the Detroit Public Schools as a teacher and administrator. I now serve as president of the Detroit Delta Preparatory Academy for Social Justice, a charter school that was founded by my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta sorority, in 2014 over at 3550 John C. Lodge Drive here in the city of Detroit. I come before you now because of the very reasons of after my retirement, many of us chose not to be inactive to what we saw was happening within our city of Detroit. So many of us through Delta Sigma Theta were already ex-employees of the district, the former superintendents, the former principals, et cetera, and we came together to see what we could do to make an impact of what we saw as the demise of our school district. And out of that effort, after 4 long years, we did found or start the Detroit Delta Preparatory Academy for Social Justice in 2014. But I must say it is very disheartening because what I have witnessed in my city, the place that I live, the place that my grandchildren go to school, et cetera, is truly irreparable. And what I heard yesterday from the East Point Public Schools, that you would not allow the East Point Public Schools to be taken over because they have seen what has happened in the Detroit Public Schools. And now here we stand at this crossroads of what do we do immediately for our children. So I stand in support of the Detroit Educational Committee as a process of returning power back to us, the residents of the city of Detroit, and recapturing our schools for those of us who truly care about our black and brown students who have not been able to escape the city in which we live. I am pleased to serve now as not an alternative, but in collaboration with the Detroit Public Schools, with the Detroit Delta Preparatory Academy as a vehicle to offer choice and to offer providing a place of nurture and caring for our children who are thriving with us because of that care and that concern for them. So at this point, I have really said my piece, other than I stand always as a resident of the city of Detroit. I will do battle for this city. And to not give these schools back to those of us who constitutionally have control over the schools is criminal. And I employ the state of Michigan to do what they have done in all other districts in this state, and to return the schools to the residents of the city of Detroit, and to assist us in educating those who are the least of these and who do not speak for themselves. So therefore, I stand in their place to speak for them. I thank you. And at this point, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Doug Ross. He is president of the American Promise Schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Several years ago, a broad-based group of education and civic leaders, convened by the Skillman Foundation, created a plan to substantially improve public education in the city of Detroit. One of the things we had learned in the previous years, as a number of folks up here have demonstrated, it is possible in public schools in Detroit with regular open admissions children to graduate those children from high school and send them on to college at the same rate as Birmingham Groves or Grosse Pointe North. The kids of the city are not broken. We simply have not provided them with enough good schools. The plan that came out of that process was straightforward and simple. Encourage organizations here and across the country that operate successful schools to open new public schools in Detroit, especially in underserved neighborhoods, and move to close low-performing schools, be they charter or DPS. Plan focused on school quality, not on school governance. Recently, some of these same citizens proposed a Detroit Education Commission to help facilitate the implementation of this plan. However, the version of this commission that was passed by the state Senate last month failed to meet the governance-neutral position of its proponents. Incentives for the commission's renewal and consequences for school failure disadvantaged charters. As a result, some of us opposed it. Based on his desire to pull the entire community together around an education turnaround plan for Detroit, Mayor Duggan reached out to the charter community here in the city to better understand our views. The result is a series of amendments proposed by the mayor to the Senate version of the DEC to make it more even-handed. Given the mayor's belief that a good school is a good school and a bad one is a bad one, whether charter or DPS, and his commitment to see these amendments embodied in the final statute, our board chair, Tiffany Taylor, the Board of American Promise Schools, and I are pleased to support the enactment of a Detroit Education Commission as part of the Detroit school reform legislation. And now I'd like to introduce a Detroit parent, Quan Edgar. Mr. Edgar.
Good morning to you all. I first must give honor to God and thank Him for this place and space and time. And I do that because I'm accountable to Him. And we all must be accountable to someone or some entity. We're looking to change the dynamics of this city. But so many times people want things to stay the same, and when we're doing things the same over and over and over again and expect a different outcome, I do believe that's called insanity. I am Detroit. I'm a Detroit parent. I was born and raised in Detroit, went to Detroit public schools. My children go to a Detroit public school and two in a charter. I've had my issues in both DPS and in charters. My children have, the system in both entities have failed my children, but because I'm the parent that I am, the resources that I have, I'm able to address the issues head on. But what about those parents who can't? What about those parents who don't have the transportation to get their kids across town to that good school? It's time we make a change. It's time we consider the children as opposed to considering our pockets. It is ever so important that we raise up a generation of leaders. The children truly are our future, but we treat them as doormats. We lay them aside and walk all over them. You say, no, we don't do that. You do when you're not providing quality education. And I'm not here to bash DPS or charter because my children have and are in both. But I ask everyone in the state, the city, that we make a change, that we hold everyone accountable for their actions and that which they're doing. We got to get to a point where we keep the main thing, and the main thing is our children. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Ralph Bland of New Paradigm for Education.
Good morning. I stand before you today as an education leader in Michigan, the city of Detroit, and New Paradigm for Education. And I plan to bring over 5,000 quality seats to the city of Detroit for the children that deserve that. In addition, I am a product of Detroit Public Schools. I taught in Detroit Public Schools and charter school. All parents and the community wants are schools that educate students at a high academic level. And that high academic level should be a level of excellence. Today is not about, let me be clear, today is not about Detroit Public Schools versus charter schools. It is not. We must have a system of quality and accountability that eliminates the political and structural barriers which have prevented children from excelling at high levels of academic excellence. The leaders that stand before you today welcome accountability, and what resonates with me is the passion, the will that each have committed in order to ensure our future, our children are educated to compete nationally and are able to succeed K through 16 and beyond. The Detroit Education Commission will bring a certain level of quality and accountability, which has been limited in our Detroit landscape. But the excitement today that Detroit public school leaders and charter school leaders stand before you in collaboration in support of the Detroit Education Commission that will create the accountability and the quality so long needed. The DEC will be a game changer, which will bring accountability, but also, let me be clear again, a champion for education and take responsibility for the city of Detroit. Name, Mike Duggan, Mayor Mike Duggan. The book From Good to Great, authored by Jim Collins, said a sentence: we have the right people in the right seat on the bus at the right time. And it's time to move in that direction. The children in Detroit have suffered long enough by our own adult mistakes, and they should suffer no longer. And that is not an option. Excellence is what children in the city of Detroit need. Now I would like to bring my partner in this collaboration, Superintendent Alicia Merriweather.
All right, good morning. Again, my name is Alicia Merriweather, and I am the interim superintendent for Detroit Public Schools. And the reason that I'm standing here today is because I believe, as do the teachers and administrators in Detroit Public Schools, that every child in the city of Detroit deserves an excellent education. That is why I'm here. And I want to be clear that what we are standing for is accountability for all. And I think there is no one in this city who can argue against accountability for all that leads to excellence for children. I think it is high time that the adults that are involved in situations make choices that are best for children. And I think when we look at the situation in the city of Detroit, all too often decisions have been made by adults who are either A, disconnected from children, B, are into different motives than what's best for children, or C, and I hate to say this, but I think sometimes C means we just don't care about our kids. I cannot draw any other conclusion when you look at some decisions that have been made about education in the city of Detroit than to come to one of those three places in our decision making. And today, why I'm here is to say I do stand behind accountability. What I want to say, though, is those accountability measures need to be developed by people who are involved in education, and we need to be very careful that those measures are logistically and relevant to what happens in actual schools. So when you're looking at what accountability measures should be used, the educators have to be a part of that discussion. And so as we stand together, I sure hope that as people are listening and we stand here, that part of the conversation is around, okay, we're going to have accountability measures. How will those measures be developed? And I would think that all of us standing here would say that people who are involved in education should be the ones developing those accountability measures, number one. Number two, to make a level playing field for all, those measures have to be implemented with fidelity across the entire city. And so with those things being said, the final thing that I would offer to everyone listening is that Detroit Public Schools is not afraid of accountability. If accountability is put in place that is around educational measures. And secondly, I know that we have the staff that is dedicated that has been committed and is certainly willing and ready to step up to the plate for accountability measures moving forward. So I am delighted to be here this morning, and I hope that as people listen and we process, that the things that I've said around accountability, how those measures are being developed, and then us working collaboratively are things that people consider as we move away from this conversation today. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Michonne Jackson, and I am the board chair of Michigan Technical Academy. I'm standing in support of access to high-quality education for all children. As a parent, educator, and charter school board member, I've witnessed the dire need of a more high-performing school system in Detroit. I returned to Detroit years ago as a divorced mother of an 8-year-old and was dismayed that my daughter could not enroll in the city's best schools. Though she was an honor roll student, Detroit's highest performing schools denied her admission due to their high demand and long waiting lists. It was suggested by many that I look outside of the city to seek enrollment in neighboring communities. But as a single mother on a teacher's salary, such a choice just was not an option for me. I could not afford to move to a more affluent district. I remember the hurt, fear, and embarrassment of my child's denial. Worse yet, I recall wondering, why were there so few excellent school choices in our city? Now as an educator, specifically charter school administrator, I recognize the need for a more stable education landscape. Each September, I, like many of my fellow school and CMO leaders, fret over enrollment, not knowing how many students will report until the first, second, oftentimes third week of school. Our enrollment numbers fluctuate for varied reasons, including students leaving the city. This instability presents challenges such as inaccurate book and material orders, teacher attrition for not knowing if you have to shuffle teachers around to other schools, and oversized classrooms. The turnaround charter school of which I serve as board chair is plagued by these same issues. Our current Wild West system of education has not yielded the number of quality schools our children deserve. I now fear that somewhere in our city, there is another parent, single mother, single father, or joint household, who have had to experience the same anguish I did years ago. No parent should have to look outside of the city for a quality education. No parent should have to experience the same anguish I felt seeking admission to a great school. Quality choice should be widespread. Quality choice should be accessible. More quality choices should exist in Detroit, and it is for that reason that I support the DEC. I would now like to introduce Renee Burgess, President of Equity Education. Thank you.
Good morning. I would like to thank everyone for being here today. It is time to stop underserving our kids, our families, and our neighborhoods. We are here today to publicly express our support for the Detroit Education Commission and to say to our peers within and outside the city that we are not afraid of accountability, transparency, or collaboration. We welcome the opportunity to be champions for our children and help make a collective educational impact to help change the current trajectory in order to demonstrate improved outcomes and services. It is time to center the conversation on quality and kids, not choice and politics. For too long, outdated and broken policies have resulted in low-performing systems of schools that are failing our kids each and every day. The Detroit Education Commission represents a chance for adults to come together to make an impact that changes the status quo. to challenge those that are willing to up our game and accelerate results, and to provide a more coordinated system like transportation, because that is what our kids, families, and communities deserve. This is the time to show our commitment to helping create change through a coordinated system that communicates performance and meets local needs. We disagree with those who claim the DEC will take away choice and make things harder. Actually, we welcome the opportunity to better define and raise the quality bar and learn from others. We believe the DEC is the right choice to help ensure Detroit has a portfolio of excellent and diverse educational options to meet the needs of all who work within and attend our schools. This is an opportunity to do what is right for kids. In today's educational landscape, we should honestly reflect on whether our decisions and actions match our beliefs. And for us, those standing in front of you, that decision is to support the DEC. I'd like to introduce Maurice Morton, CEO of Detroit Academy Arts and Science.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here to proclaim that I support the Detroit Education Commission. I was born and raised in Detroit on the east side, and I attended and was educated within the Detroit public school system. It was my education at Cass Tech that got me a full scholarship to the University of Michigan. It was that education that got me into Wayne State Law School, where I was a graduate. It was that education that got me into Harvard University, where I received my master's in public administration. As a charter administrator, with that background, it would be very selfish of me not to support the Detroit Education Commission. Our children deserve the opportunities that I had in the city of Detroit growing up. Our children deserve the opportunity to become your next lawyers, your next doctors, your next teachers, your next school administrators, your next mayor of the city of Detroit. But the way our schools are designed in the city right now will not allow for that. You can drive the east side of Detroit and you will find there are neighborhoods without schools, neighborhoods where I grew up without schools. That is not fair to the children of Detroit. They deserve better. And it is my opinion that the Detroit Education Commission will deliver that quality and that system of deliverables and accountability that we deserve and that our children deserve. And so that is why I support the Detroit Education Commission. And at this time, it is my pleasure to introduce the founder of Cornerstone Schools, Mr. Clark Durant.
I'm going to go off script a little bit. My views on supporting a reformed DEC are in today's Free Press. But I want to take the mayor's encouragement before we came out to speak from the heart about this. First of all, I didn't expect to be here. 25 years ago, when the new Archbishop in town, Adam Cardinal Maida, asked me to start the Cornerstone Schools, and at one point, frankly, we had 5 private schools around the city serving over 2,500 children. I'm very proud of all of the people who made the successes of the children in those schools, where they would go on to very successful lives and fulfilling lives. But it came a time when even Cornerstone had to make a choice about whether or not it could continue to operate solely as a private school, or whether or not we would expand and operate a charter. And the man who came around to visit our schools, who was one of the individuals to encourage Cornerstone to set up charter schools, was Mayor Mike Duggan. He was not the mayor then. This was back in 2007, 2008. And Mike said to me and to a mutual friend of ours, how do you take the experiences and the excellences that are affordable for children who come to our Cornerstone schools and make them more widely available? So we formed a strategic planning committee, and we opened 2 charter schools in 2009. Currently, we have 4. We have 2 more in the that we're going to unveil shortly. We currently serve 2,800 children, and like my good friend and brother Ralph Bland, we're going to expand to 5,000 children. But the thing that struck me, and I'm very grateful that the mayor asked me to come to the dinner the other night, because what I found was a very lively conversation about people who were dedicated, truly dedicated in every way to bring excellence across every school in the city. Judge Rhodes was there, a number of charter operators and board members were there, and there was a unity regarding the commitment to accountability and quality. I'm also grateful, like Doug Ross, I didn't support the Senate version of the DEC. I think the conversation now about changes to level the playing field, not to limit choice, to let good operators expand so that there are more excellent choices for all the kids in the city. The lie that needs to be put to bed are that the children of Detroit are somehow or other less in terms of what they deserve, or less in their ability to achieve. I can tell you, as a person who's been involved in this for 25 years, the untapped human potential of all the children in the city is fabulous. I've seen it, I've been a part of helping to shape it, and I've seen it in schools all across the city. It was an honor for me to be the co-chairman of the academic subcommittee of the Coalition for the Future of All Detroit School Children. What I found in our subcommittee meetings are principals of K-8 schools, of high schools, that were deeply dedicated to the excellence in their schools, but they also talked about the challenges, the highly politicized nature that education had become, the lack of ability to have the resources to do what was necessary to bring excellence. I believe that it is time for a change. I told the mayor over the weekend, after the discussion that had taken place at his home, after making some other phone calls, that I would come this morning, probably the only Republican here, but I would come this morning to support what he is trying to do. I believe what Ralph said, that if you have the right people in the right place at the right time, good things and great things can happen. But one thing is clear, we need more, not less, excellent choices. The elephant in the room, by the way, is the fact that an awful lot of people who are judges and mayors and other things around our city were educated in Catholic schools. They had the choice. They had the option to go to schools that would nurture them in a different sort of a way. We have to be looking at every possible way to expand the choices and the opportunities in the neighborhoods for families. And I believe that this is the beginning of that effort. I believe it is the beginning of that turnaround. So I came here today to support this new kind of DEC that will bring accountability, that needs to be at a level playing field, and that will help the opportunity for more excellent choices to be available for our kids. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce the mayor of Detroit, who needs no further introduction, but this word. What I have found in Mike over the years is that this is a man who seeks to solve problems. He seeks to solve them by listening to other people, by absorbing what he hears, and trying to craft solutions from that. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce the mayor of the city of Detroit, Mike Duggan.
I guess I've been mayor 2.5 years now, and I don't know that I've had a more emotional morning than I have had today, and it's pretty refreshing. I spent most of the last month in Lansing, and the atmosphere there is just toxic. You can't sit down and have a conversation like this. You've got folks on one side who are attacking charters as taking money and not being accountable, and you got folks on the other side saying DPS can never succeed, the district's a disaster, shut it down. And if you are on the opposite side, they'll call you any name or say anything about you. And when I started out on this, I looked at one thing. This morning, 27,000 children who live in the city of Detroit got up and went to school at a school in another city. 1 out of 4 children in this city is going to school outside the boundaries. We got roughly 100 DPS and 100 charter schools. We have lots of choice. What we don't have is quality choice. And so I got into this and said, look, we should have a principle that says the only thing that should matter is the children. We need more quality DPS schools. We need more quality charter schools. Let's grow both. Let's not fight with each other. Let's work together. And oh my God, it was machine gunned by both sides in Lansing. And then the most fascinating thing happened here. And folks in Lansing put stuff out like somebody must have strong-armed somebody because they just don't understand anything else, right? But for the superintendent, Alicia Merriweather, who's doing such a phenomenal job, to stand here with the charters. Do you know what that means in this town? She's got people saying to her that charters are the enemy. How could you possibly associate with them? A standard that applies to all of us. And yet, she comes here and says, I only care about one thing, and that's the children. And then these charter operators, who you saw in the paper, nasty emails from their associations, don't attend. How could you do this? You've got more than 20 schools represented here, including people who have been pioneers in the development of charter schools in Detroit. Ralph Bland, Doug Ross, Clark Durant, these have been pioneers from the beginning, people who believe passionately in choice. And they've all come together to say, what we're doing isn't working because there's not nearly enough quality choice in this city. And instead of having DPS versus charters, what if we come together and have a single standard and it treats each of us the same and we encourage each other and grow both? And so here's what the DEC means. It's very simple. It says this. Right now, we all know that we've got a dozen different authorizers with a dozen different standards and schools opening and closing. We've had 80% of the schools in this city open and close in the last 8 years. It's been total chaos. The DEC says 4 things. It says that DPS and charters will be treated the same in an accountability system, an A to F grading system that's going to apply to everybody. As Superintendent Merriweather said, it's going to be developed by the folks here, but it will be based primarily on growth. That if you come in and take a group of children who are performing poorly, you are going to be graded on the progress they made, not penalized for the fact that you came in and took on some of our most challenging residents. So one, you're all going to have the same grading system. It's going to apply to everybody. Second, if you want to open a new school, it is going to be a process where you come in and show the DEC that the neighborhood needs that school. As Maurice Morton pointed out, we got neighborhoods in this city with no schools and others that have more than they can need. So we're going to have a single standard. Except, if you're already an A or B, you're a high performer, you don't have to go to the DEC. You can go everywhere you want, whether you're DPS or charter. If you're an A or B, you can replicate wherever you want. Everybody else goes through the same standard and shows why that school is needed in that neighborhood. Third, where we've got neighborhoods that don't have schools, the DEC will go out and take proposals from DPS and from the charters and place the strongest applicant in that neighborhood. We've got an area in Northeast Detroit with 6,000 high school students in 2 high schools. 1 high school for every 3,000 kids. How does that make any sense? I'm told that it's the free market. I don't believe our children ought to be subject to the free market when you're talking about public school dollars, taxpayer dollars going into it. We want to be able to do that. And then fourth, if you're graded out as a D or an F 3 years in a row, you're going to be closed and we're going to bring in somebody else to operate. Now, think about that. The folks here are all unified. There's charters out there who disagree with us. We don't claim the folks here represent everybody, but I tell you what, in Lansing, they've been peddling a story that this is an anti-charter initiative and all the charters are against it. And I said from day one, if you are a quality charter operator, you should love the DEC because we are going to expand quality schools, DPS, and charter. If you're not a quality operator, you ought to be concerned about the DEC. And so today we say 4 things. Single grading system applies to everybody. Single opening system applies to everybody. Single competition for areas that need new school applies to everybody, and a single closing standard that applies to everybody. Washington, D.C. has a similar program, similar demographics, and about 100 charter and about 100 traditional public schools. And they are leading America in the growth of math and reading score. What Superintendent Merriweather said about the standards, everybody up here agrees with, and they have my commitment that it's the educators who are going to write the standard. And the way the bill is drafted, Senate Bill 710, while the mayor appoints the 7 members, 2 have 5 years experience in administration or teaching at DPS, and 1 is a parent of a current DPS child. 2 have 5 years experience as an administrator or a teacher at a charter school, and one is a current parent of a child in a charter school in Detroit, and the seventh person has a background in school accountability systems. These are going to be people who come out of the education system. And everybody up here has my commitment. There's going to be a collaboration. I'm not telling you everybody is going to agree with the standard at the end, but everybody's going to have input, and it's going to be fair, and both groups are going to come to the conclusion that, you know what, this is about as fair and as accountable as we can do. And the conversations we've had already, I'm very confident that we can do that. So we'll be around if you want to ask questions of individuals. Thank you all very much for being here.